The thunderous arrival of Lewis Hamilton at Scuderia Ferrari in 2026 has set off a chain reaction that extends well beyond the simple exchange of seats or the addition of another superstar name to the roster. It has introduced a highly sophisticated, aggressively calibrated technical philosophy that is actively reshaping the development and character of the SF-26, forcing every element of the car, and particularly its most delicate systems, into alignment with a new set of demands. This influence runs deeper than setup tweaks or occasional feedback sessions. It is manifesting as a fundamental evolution in how the car is expected to behave, especially in the high-stakes arena of braking and corner entry, where the smallest imbalance can separate glory from disaster. Central to this ongoing revolution is the adoption and refinement of a distinctly rear-biased brake mapping approach. This concept goes far beyond adjusting brake bias percentages on a steering wheel dial. It redefines the entire chassis dynamics during deceleration, altering weight transfer axle loading, and the delicate interplay between front and rear grip at the precise moment when a driver commits to shedding massive speed and rotating the car toward the apex. In pure performance terms, the mapping encourages the rear of the SF-26 to become a more active, responsive participant under heavy braking. It allows for later braking points, sharper rotation on entry, and the potential to carry more speed through the corner by using controlled rear movement as an asset rather than a liability. When executed with precision, it turns the braking zone into an offensive weapon rather than a defensive necessity. Lewis Hamilton has long been recognized as one of the finest practitioners of this art in Formula One history. His ability to trail brake deep into corners, manipulate the car's mass with extraordinary sensitivity, and provoke just the right amount of rear rotation at exactly the right instant has defined some of his most memorable performances. He does not simply stop the car, he orchestrates a pivot, using the kinetic energy of deceleration to load the rear tires productively, creating a dynamic balance that sets up stronger exits and more aggressive overall lap times. For him, a rear-biased map feels like an extension of his natural instincts. It rewards aggression tempered by supreme car control, and it liberates the kind of late, committed entries that have been hallmarks of his 7 world titles. Hamilton's data and feedback have reportedly stunned Ferrari engineers at times, revealing nuances in braking stability, energy harvesting during deceleration, and rear axle behavior that have prompted rapid iterations in mapping and even hardware considerations. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, is confronting an increasingly challenging new reality inside the same garage. The Monegasque has forged his reputation on a driving style that prizes a crisp, responsive front end, decisive turn-in, and a stable, predictable platform that allows him to maintain elegant flow and rhythm through the corners. He excels when he can trust the nose of the car to bite early and cleanly brake with composure while keeping the rear relatively calm, and then exploit strong traction on the exit. His best performances have often come from smoothness under pressure, from building confidence through consistent reference points, and from a car that feels balanced rather than edgy or overly lively at the limit. The shift toward a more rear-oriented brake mapping disrupts that comfort zone in profound ways. By making the rear more willing to rotate and participate actively during the braking phase, the SF-26 demands a different kind of driver input, greater modulation of pedal pressure, heightened awareness of rear tire loading, and a willingness to embrace and manage a touch more instability on entry. What Hamilton experiences as natural liberation can feel, for Leclerc, like driving on constantly shifting foundations. The instinctive trust in a strong front bite is tested when the rear begins to assert itself more forcefully, requiring recalibration of braking points, steering timing, and release thresholds that were once second nature. Muscle memory, built over years of repetition at the highest level, does not rewrite itself overnight. The result can be subtle hesitation, a momentary loss of flow, or the uncomfortable need to consciously overthink phases of the lap that should remain purely instinctive. This is where the human dimension of technical progress reveals its sharper edges. In Formula One, drivers are not mere operators of machinery. They form deep, almost symbiotic relationships with their cars through thousands of laps, building an internal library of sensations, thresholds, and emotional rhythms. When a brake mapping philosophy begins to tilt the car's personality toward one driver's strengths, it inevitably creates friction for the other. For Leclerc, the demand is significant. He must adapt to a setup that increasingly rewards a more kinetic, rotation-heavy style, one that flirts with controlled aggression rather than prioritizing front-end predictability and mid-corner stability. The psychological burden is real. Confidence can waver when familiar sensations change, points of commitment shift. Even the subtle fear threshold during high-speed braking zones can feel altered. Adaptation is the lifeblood of the sport, but it rarely comes without cost, especially when the machine itself seems to be speaking a slightly different language with each passing race. Hamilton's presence is exerting this pressure not through overt dominance or political maneuvering, but through the sheer weight of his experience, data, and the team's relentless pursuit of performance. Whether in simulator work, on-track testing, or post-session debriefs, his feedback on braking stability, weight transfer, and how the car behaves under varying bias settings has influenced development directions. The SF-26 is evolving, at least in part, around braking phases that amplify his particular mastery of deceleration and pivot-like entries. This does not diminish Leclerc's elite status. He remains one of the most gifted drivers on the grid, but it does place him in the position of having to evolve alongside a car that is steadily acquiring a more pronounced character aligned with his teammates' preferences. The intensity of this intra-team dynamic burst into public view during the Chinese Grand Prix at Shanghai, where the duel between Hamilton and Leclerc reached a level of ferocity that transcended internal competition and captivated the entire paddock. Racing Bull's team principal Alan Permane openly admitted that he became momentarily distracted from his own duties, unable to tear his eyes away from the wheel-to-wheel scrap unfolding between the two Ferraris. The battle was not a polite exchange of positions, it was a prolonged, high-stakes fight featuring multiple overtakes, close calls, and raw racing intensity that highlighted both drivers' willingness to push boundaries against each other. While Leclerc has spoken positively about enjoying the fight and the competitive edge it brings, subtle tensions have surfaced, from radio frustrations during the sprint to differing views on strategy and car balance. Team principal Fred Vasseur has praised both drivers for keeping the rivalry professional, arguing that such battles ultimately strengthen the team. Yet outsiders, including former champions, have noted that the ferocity could risk costing crucial constructors points if it leads to compromised races or overly aggressive tactics. So far in the 2026 season, Ferrari has shown promising form, consistently delivering podium finishes across the early rounds. Leclerc has edged ahead in the inter-team standings with strong performances, while Hamilton has demonstrated impressive adaptation, securing solid results and pushing his teammate hard despite the inevitable learning curve of a new environment. The score remains close, and the rivalry shows every sign of intensifying rather than settling. This creates a delicate balancing act for Ferrari, harnessing the strengths of two exceptional talents while ensuring that technical development does not inadvertently favor one style so heavily that it undermines the other. In the end, the brake mapping evolution at Ferrari symbolizes something larger than a single software parameter or bias setting. It represents the quiet but powerful way in which one driver's philosophy can permeate an entire team, influencing everything from chassis balance to upgrade priorities and even the psychological atmosphere inside the garage. The SF-26 is no longer a blank canvas or a purely neutral machine. It is developing a distinct personality, one that leans into aggressive rotation, masterful deceleration, and the dangerous thrill of making the rear work as an active ally on corner entry. For Hamilton, this feels like coming home, a natural extension of his long-honed craft. For Leclerc, it presents an ongoing test of resilience, adaptability, and the willingness to reshape long-standing instincts in pursuit of collective success. Formula One has always thrived on such tensions. The smallest technical decisions, a shift in brake mapping here, a change in weight transfer philosophy there, can ripple into the largest competitive and human consequences. As the season unfolds, Ferrari must navigate this evolving reality with care. If Leclerc can fully embrace and master the car's new demands, the team could possess a uniquely versatile weapon capable of challenging at the very highest level. If the adaptation remains a persistent struggle, the internal dynamics could become a decisive factor in their championship aspirations. Either way, Hamilton has not simply joined Ferrari. He has begun to redefine it from within, leaving his unmistakable imprint on the SF-26 and compelling everyone around him to rise to a more demanding standard. The brake mapping revolution is only the visible tip of that deeper transformation, and its full impact on the team, the drivers, and the 2026 title fight is still unfolding lap by lap.